journal. So here is the question that you've covered through this blog. And I'm just going to, instead of just doing a few of the journals, I'm going to do them all so you can see how the wages control account plays. And using this little tip really of wages control account needs to be in every single journal. So I'm just going to demonstrate on here so you can see how that works. So the first thing I'm going to do is record the wages expense. Now the wages expense is, as we've seen in the blog, the total amount that the organization has to pay for wages, and that includes those employers' national insurance and employers' pension, as we've seen. So the wages expense, as you'd expect, wages would be added to the wages expense account on the debit side because it's a debit account, as you can see here. And we would record that in the wages control account. So that would definitely appear on the credit side, purely because we've got to record the wages expense on the debit side, therefore the other side has to be a credit entry. Now we'll record it in the wages control purely and simply to control what we then post for the other journals. And what I mean by that is just making sure that we've got it right, because it's really important that we pay our employees correctly, that we pay Hmrc and pension liabilities correctly and accurately as well. So the wages control, therefore, to finish off the wages expense, we would credit wages control, as you can see here. So that's the first journal, recording the wages expense. Now what we're going to do is this here, this amount that we've got in the wages control, we're going to take out of the wages control and put it into the other accounts, therefore reconciling that the amounts that we've paid to our employees, Hmrc and pension, all match. And you'll see that as we go through this journal. So the second journal, then, let's record the net wages. So net wages is the amount that we actually pay our employees. So as you've seen in the blog anyway, that's going to be our wages expense. We'll take out any of the ERS to give us the gross wages, and then from the gross wages we take out the income tax and the employees information, and what's left over is obviously what we pay to our staff. So when we pay money out of our bank, it will go on the credit side of the bank. This would be money out, as you've seen in some of the other blogs that I've done. So it'll appear on the credit side of the bank. So we're reducing the bank balance, we credit the bank. So now we need to debit somewhere, and that debit is going to come out of the wages control, as you can see here. So you can see we've credited the bank with money going out the bank, but we've moved that out of wages control. So we're starting to use some of that wages expense now to post to where it needs to go in the accounts. So the next journal is going to be record the Hmrc liability. Now the key, as you've seen in the blog, is the word liability. So because we're recording a new liability, we're going to expect the transaction to appear on the credit side because we're increasing that liability, like so. So the Hmrc liability is going to be the income tax, the employer's national insurance, and the employee's national insurance. Now again, we're going to take that out of the wages control because it's sat in there at the moment in that 76340. So we're going to take it out of there and we've put it into the liability already, like so. So again, you can see that the wages control is being used. We're taking it out of the wages control and putting it into the correct account. The final one then is the pension liability. Now again, the key word is it's a liability, so therefore we would expect the transaction to be on the credit side because we are increasing the liability, as you can see here. So again, that pension liability is currently sat in that £76,340 because, as we established earlier on, that wages expense amount includes the employer's pension as well and the employee's pension. So again, we would take that out of wages control like so, and it will be placed in the pension liability, as you can see here. So every single journal that we've done, you can see how that's involving the wages control. We're either sticking it in the wages control, as we've done here, as our control figure, and then we're going to take each one of those transactions out of the wages control into those relevant accounts. And what you will find then at the end is that this account, this wages control account, will balance, and that means we've done our journals correctly, as you can see here. So there we go. So that's how the wages control account works. So I'm just going to then demonstrate what we do with the actual journals, because obviously in the AAT exams you don't get given the information or the transactions like this. You generally get given your answer table to look a bit more like that. So let's replicate what you would then do. So we've seen the wages expense. We've seen that we're going to debit the expense account because it's an expense, and we're going to stick it in wages control to be our control figure. So our wages expense journal would look like this. As you can see, we would debit wages expense and we would credit wages control. So as I was saying before, when you want to try and make these a bit easier for yourselves, remember that wages control then, if we've credited it here, we're going to need to take that out of wages control for each of those other transactions, as you can see here. So the first thing I always advise students to do is just do that debit journal in those other journals, like so. So there we have it. The wages control is on every single one of those journals, and it's on the debit side of every single one of them. And that's a great way to show that we have that balancing figure. We credited wages control to begin with, and then we're taking each one of those out, as we can see, on the debit side of the journal. And then we just finish off the journal. By doing that first, you're already making sure that you're getting the other side of the journal correct. Now in the blog you've seen that we've covered how to get the name of the accounts correct, and this is just another way to make sure that you get the side of those correct as well. So obviously journals, they have to be debit and credit, so therefore the other side of each one of those journals is going to be on the credit side. And there you have it. There's the journals finished. So it was just a way of demonstrating how we can use that information in the question and use the wages control and make sure we have the understanding to stick those into those journals and make this question so much easier by just taking advantage of what it gives you in the question. Thank you very much. Hopefully enjoy the rest of the blog.